Hey, my name's Kyle Daniels. I'm the head of marketing at Assimilate, and we've been working with the guys at IBM to bring you some amazing content on data governance and AI. We hope you enjoy it. Hey everybody, so today we're going to be talking about the critical role of data governance in business. So I think before we start, before we get into it, what is data governance?
So data governance, the way I see it, is I'm working in my silo. Brendan here is working in his silo. We don't really talk to each other. We are just sending emails. We need somebody sitting somewhere looking at the holistic picture of what we are doing, say when we are sending the data, when we are working on each other's data. So it's a holistic picture of looking at things and making sure that they align with the objectives of the organization. So it's all about governing the work at the top level.
So I think that's really interesting in developing that further. I think if we look at most organizations, they've generated data over a number of years and actually have spent a lot of money generating this data, and where they've generated it is in a variety of different applications, enterprise applications, HR systems, all of those things. And all of that data resides in different locations. And really many organizations are thinking, how can I make best use of that data? How can I actually consume that data to give me new insight, to drive my business? And the challenge of that is really taking that raw data and making it consumable. And for me, that's, yes, it's about rules and regulations, what constitutes PII, who can see it, what are the rules around it, but it's also, active metadata management. So turning that data into something that a business person can understand and can therefore consume. And I think that starts to be really important in mobilizing data and realizing the great investment over many years people have made in generating that data and turning it into a tangible asset.
And also it has to be a quality data for it to be used, because if we send the rubbish data, the reports are going to be rubbish. And how are you going to make any decisions on them? So when you have a company with some kind of governance around it, you know that the data coming out of it, I can use it, I can make decisions, and my business is not going to be impacted in a negative way. So that's data governance is all about. Also building on that, I think we're seeing quite a lot customers taking that beyond that in the sense that when we talk about data quality, it's a facet of data engineering in certain cases, but also starting to see the provenance of data becoming important, because we've got customers where data moves from one place to the other and it transforms. What's the origin? Why did it change? Who changed it? Is that material to what I'm trying to do? But it also stems on to kind of other forms of observability to do with quality. And one of the areas certainly we're interested in, a lot of customers are talking about, is instead of the consumer being responsible for consuming data, and I like to call it going on their own adventure to find data, now we're seeing companies mandate that producers are responsible for data and making sure that they actually manage the data and as a product, manage the SLA around that data so that people know they've got the provenance of that department or that group, saying this is the authentic data and you can reuse it as part of your analytics exercise or your AI exercise. So lots of, for me, governance is expanding from that traditional area it used to be, where it was all about kind of essentially classification and rules and those types of areas, to really being the art of turning the production line, or the industrialized production line of turning raw data into consumable data and serving it up so it can be reused and used. Yeah, and you also touched upon a point about the data ownership, because let's say if I want sales data, I need to know who the person is, where to contact, because they might be generating some report. I'll take the data, I might be generating the same report. We don't want that to happen. So data governance will ensure that
there is no reputation. So whatever information is there within the organization, it is shared and it is used to its optimum usage.
Yeah. And another critical aspect, that the corollary of that is, we should be sharing more data and gaining better understanding across divisions, but also I think what it gives us is the security of knowing that some data cannot be shared, or it can only be shared to certain people. So PII being a classic case, and very much our view in IBM is that stems from the origin right through to the delivery. So, even a data engineer probably shouldn't be seeing my account number in a bank. Or my personal information. They might see it redacted as part of a column, but they shouldn't be seeing that level of detail. But someone that needs to see that data should be able to see that data. And then when you serve it up as a product, or someone actually goes on a discovery investigation of data, that's enforced right through the pipeline. And I think the interesting thing that we're seeing, and a lot of customers have come back to us recently on, is we have catalogs, but actually we're having to do all the work manually. We're having to classify things manually. So the role of AI within governance is becoming really critical to allow us to scale and really develop that at scale. But, I'm conscious that data stewards departments aren't getting bigger. No one's investing in them. I haven't met a customer that's hired more data stewards. Data's getting bigger, the demand's getting bigger. So using AI to carry the workload of classification, active metadata management, enforcing the right PII and governance rules, all of those things start to become really very powerful. And then managing by exception, if they see new data, if it sees new data it doesn't understand, then it goes to the human in the loop and is managed that way. So, it's not just the governance, it's the art of managing that governance as it scales up that makes it a reality for organizations.
And I think what I want to be conscious of is that we don't necessarily productize it, because I think sometimes when we all work in data, it's dead easy for us to go, it's really critical, everyone should use it and all the rest of it. We're selling it eventually, so we have a stake in it. What I want to get across, and maybe for the people that are listening and watching, is what are some real world applications of how data governance, so somebody employing the data governance within their business, is actually making a difference? Or is it just another thing that you've got to put in place and you've got to jump through hoops and it's going to cost this, that and the other? Like, what is the real world implications of it?
I would like to extend Brendan's example. So let's say you have this huge sales data, but some of it is customer data. So some of the columns are sensitive column, which should not be shared across the organization. They can be looked at only by authorized people. But because it's a very crucial data, you want different organization to use it for their purposes. So certain columns can be redacted. So there has to be a kind of central policy of the organization that certain data classified as sensitive data has to be shared in a particular manner. Now, how do you do that? So what you do is you create a policy around it. That column ABC, which are customer name, customer age, customer ethnicity, they should not be shared. They should be shared only with the authorized people. The data goes into, say, finance department. The second policy is around when you are transferring the file, when you are sharing the data, it needs to be transformed from column 21 to column 30. So those policies are then converted into rule, put into the automated tool of, say, IBM, and they get their data on a periodic basis in a format that they need. So on a day-to-day basis, when you have the rules, when you have the policies, and when you have a system in place, everything goes smoothly. And a lot of time is saved and a lot of efforts are not duplicated.
So on the value statement, and I think this is critical, is if you can make data consumable, and that I mean is if you can look at data as in a standard way, despite its origin. You can think of the Tower of Babel, lots of different languages don't help. But if you automatically understand them, that's quite useful. It starts to add value because, you can gain insight within an organization beyond the stovepipe of a department. You can start correlating data across departments and disciplines, and there are many sorts of
ways that you could see, for example, correlating and understanding sales figures, products that sit on the shelf, location, supply chain, are all part of a very connected infrastructure to deliver value to a customer. And if you can start sharing the details across those, albeit from different systems, there's value because you can improve those processes, you can see anomalies and things like that. So really, governance in itself is not an ends, it's an enabling technology for you to be able to share data to enhance and accelerate your business.
Yeah. I think earlier, Nikita, you talked about data privacy.
Yeah.
And obviously there's data privacy laws that are in effect. How do you see them affecting things like your data governance strategies in the future? Do you think they're going to play a big part in it? Are they almost driven by this stuff?
Absolutely. I mean, GDPR laws, data privacy laws, they are the norm now because a lot of data being processed by technologies using AI and machine learning. So it becomes even important to understand how these laws are going to govern how we use the data, how we share the data within organization and externally. And that's where data governance actually gains its momentum. And therefore, it's very important that those laws and those practices are put into place in rules and policies. And the staff should be trained about it, how to use the data and share the data. Only then, I think, the compliance side of things will be taken care of.
Yeah. And there's another side to that, which is certainly I have customers that worry about their ability to comply with subject matter requests. So, retrieve me all of the data about a specific customer, and there have been some very public cases of this, finding the data across your enterprise, retrieving it, presenting it in a report to comply with, the data regulator is really important. And there are a lot more of those requests than, I would have thought there are in many larger companies. So actually, beyond managing that and making sure you don't breach it, actually being able to comply with the regulation in terms of retrieving that data is another thing I think governance can start to help you with, because, as I say, in that discovery phase, you start to understand where data is, what it is, what type it is, and be able to present it in a way that's readable.
One of the things I wanted to touch on is that when customers are coming and having these conversations, because I imagine, and being in marketing, I always struggle to think, how do you market to people about data governance? Because, again, you don't really know you want it until you actually need it. Either it's going to save you a load of money or keep you out of prison or make you a load of money. So who's having those? Are you having the conversations with customers? Are you driving the conversation forward with customers?
I think the really key thing here is that, quite obviously, if organisations, even within organisations, have been great at selling data governance, we all wouldn't be sat here. Hopefully, we'd be on a beach somewhere reaping the rewards of the massive sales, and that's a nice thing to think about. But essentially, I think one of the critical things is nothing to do with the technology. It's to do with the ability to sell a story or tell a story about data, and this is really critical. And because essentially, for business to expend money on something that's not visible to them and they can't necessarily see the benefits, puts pressure on people within organizations to put coherent stories about the value of doing or having this process in place. And that can only be done in how it manifests itself in an outcome, a business outcome. It can't be you need data governance because it helps you with data privacy and all of that. It has to be, this is how it saves you money, makes you money, prevents some risk, right? And if you can't put it in those terms, my benchmark is if you can't tell a CFO who probably doesn't know about the technology, and if that CFO leaves without understanding how it affects the bottom line, then you've probably failed. Now, the onus is on, yes, vendors to be able to do that, but probably more importantly, people who are trying to justify that, being able to do that in a coherent way. And what I think has helped us a lot more recently, and I go to a lot of customers talking about AI because that's the area I deal with, is it's really raised the conversation about data quality, and particularly, and although I don't believe data quality is the whole thing, but how am I going to ensure my AI is reliable when I marry my data with it, when I can't be sure of my data? One customer stood up and said, "You're talking about quality data. Can I just say that we don't have any quality data?" Which was worrying because they were in charge of data quality. But the point there is it's AI has driven almost that conversation that we've not been able to create or tell the story, because AI is about potentially solving a business problem. So the company can see the outcome, and then they're thinking, well, how do I achieve the outcome? But I think for day-to-day use cases, we just need to get better at telling that story. And that's for technical people or people who sit in the IT department, it's really hard, I think, for them to learn how to talk to business in business language. And I know it should sound easy, but it's not that simple. And that's how I would market it personally.
Yeah. I mean, if that's how us going to the customer, but let's say I talk to you, I'm sold. You've taught me around, I definitely need data governance and all the rest of it, but I'm not the decision maker, deal done.
Yeah. So yeah.
But how do I go and get buy-in in the rest of the business?
But that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It starts to be outcomes. So if you can tell a story, it's all about outcomes.
Yeah.
So you can't drive, I don't believe you can drive a data governance strategy based on implement data governance, spend 3 years doing it and the whole world is solved. You have to start with, what are you trying to do with your business? What outcomes are really strategic to you? What problems are you trying to resolve? Pick one of them. Build your, locate your data, build your governance strategy based on that single use case. And we call it in IBM shape and scale. So you build that one, but then what you do is build the trust through that you can deliver that. They see the benefits of providing quality data. They understand that that's maintained quality data, not once in a time, which you typically get when you move data into another repository and say that's quality. You then have project 2 and 3 that are also business justified. And in IBM, that's why we have a client engineering team, which partners can use with customers, where we look at a business use case and we refine that business use case and deliver an MVP on our dollar, because we're an American company, in sort of 4 to 6 weeks. That often justifies that governance infrastructure in delivering that value because it's connected. It then becomes a lot easier to say, well, what about project 2 and 3 that also are going to build out in an agile way that governance structure? So it's not about biting off the whole, apple, cherry, piece of fruit in one go. I don't know whether you see that, but that's
No, absolutely. So just extending the idea, I would say that you start a story, and whatever the pain point is, you have a KPI which actually tells you, okay, if you do this and if you solve this problem with the governance, what is the benefit that the company is going to get? Build a KPI around it, capture the data to get that KPI, monitor it on the periodic basis, and then find out that I invested X amount in my data governance project for the data quality. This is the KPI. So my KPI is the data quality issues raised as tickets in my support system used to be 500. Now they have come down to 300. Maybe my benchmark for next year is probably 200. Yeah. So once you quantify your pain points or your resolution, then I think it's much easier to understand whether you're justifying that investment. So in fact, KPI building is one of the pillars of data governance.
And I think the net of this discussion is learn to tell the story to the business. And there's some really good books that I've read on that subject. I think it's something people think that they can just do. Some people are gifted with that. A lot of us aren't. And I think learning how that story needs to be pitched, and choose the hardest person to talk to, and imagine what you'd have to say to them to get them to want to buy into it. And that happens within companies. We might sell to companies, but I think within companies, there's a selling process that's required for this. And it's not as easy as saying, I can transform your bottom line because you'll sell more widgets. That probably is the use case, but you can spend XYZ on a governance system doesn't really float many business people's boat. So you have to translate it into something they care about.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for your time today, guys, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.